Steve, episode 20. We finally made it there. Big one for the Broadway block today. A lot of, I wouldn't say exciting things, a lot of things to talk about. Uh, Big loss to the Capitals, and in my opinion, a big loss to the organization by James Dolan firing Jeff Gorton and John Davidson. Steve, what do you think about all this news yesterday? It was quite a Cinco de Mayo for the Rangers.
Honestly, man, that was the most surprising thing that we've heard all season. From all the crazy developments that there's been this year, this is insane to me. I want to start by saying that I feel it's completely unwarranted. I feel like there are plenty of ways to get your message across as far as an owner trying to convey what should be done from your staff. I shudder to think what could happen with just how great our prospect pool is and how much work it took in a very short period of time. I don't think there's many people out there that would have said that they saw this coming at all. I think this is one of the, dare I say, one of the craziest things that I've ever witnessed as a Rangers fan. Unreal.
Should we go over the timeline of like how things happened?
Sure thing.
So we had the Capital game, the one May 3rd. Obviously, we all know what happened with Tom Wilson, Pavel Buchnevich, Artemi Panarin, all of the above, what happened. So the Rangers came out and really didn't like the head of player safety, how he handled it, George Parros. So we released a statement. Now, on the statement, we have contradictions all over the place on if Jeff Gorton and John Davidson were a part of it. They're claiming that they were not a part of it. They didn't want to be a part of it. And but it's just really hard to believe that, because if you're the president of the organization and the general manager, like anything that's happening in the organization, your social media department, bookings, events, games, everything that's going on. So that's a little fishy right there. So after the statement, blah, 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 game comes out, where we had the episode 19 yesterday. We talked a little bit about how we felt about it. Then, boom, right after we filmed episode 19, you call me or you text me. I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone. And I look and I'm like, what? Jeff Gorton and John Davidson fired? Okay. Game happens. Obviously, all the fights happen. Then word comes out that this was always going to happen. And it wasn't because of the New York Rangers releasing that statement on Twitter. And that it was just based on production and performance, which is very, very hard to believe, because if it is based on performance, when could David Quinn, the coach, go along with, you just clean house completely? You put Knoblauch back in for the last 2 or 3 games. It just seems really fishy. And here's the problem that I have with all the things, how they went down. The problem is James Dolan owns the team. So this kind of stuff happens regularly between the New York Knicks. This is why they can't get ace. They have the money to get the free agents, and nobody wants to come. They go to Brooklyn. They go anywhere else. They go to Philadelphia. They go to all those other teams, basketball related. Never has we thought that he would overstep his boundary and come in and say, we need to win now, and come in. We've always, in 24 hours, we've turned it in the New York Knicks faster than the New York Knicks could even screw this thing up.
Couldn't agree with you more, man. And the issue seems to be not understanding the realm. Like when you talk to a casual Rangers fan that might tell you that that will be good in a couple of years, even that is surprising to hear. Like if you talk about any other sports, how long it takes for a rebuild to fully see itself through, you're talking almost a decade of being a cellar dweller. And the Rangers chose to add, the Rangers chose to add a guy in Panarin that gives the fans a little bit of a sigh of relief because there's a chance that you can win almost every game. If your goalie can make some saves and Panarin can do his thing, you give yourself a shot to win a lot of games. So I think there was a lot of fans that, when I say casual fans, maybe not guys that can list every roster player and the prospects is included, that just is sitting down to watch a game, maybe feels like there is something missing. And to a casual fan, they might even still say that we should wait and that we should keep doing things the slow way, that in a couple more years. And if you think about that timeline right there, that's still expecting a lot in 4 years of a sample time. You're talking like 2 years from now, and having done the last 2 seasons or so, you can call it 2.5 if you want. My point being, I don't think there's any Rangers fan, especially what I'll call like an elevated level, someone who pays attention a lot, that thought that this was going slowly at all. I mean,
I think
in
it's been
winning
going fast.
it very much so, and in winning the lotto. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, other NHL fans of other teams have texted me and been like, wow, that's been one of the fastest rebuilds I've ever seen. You guys are almost done. Like, good job.
And for context, these are Flyers fans, Devils fans that have seen the work that it takes to take either a team that's not that good and make them into a playoff contender and so forth. So granted, winning the lotto helps a bunch. But if we had selected 8th overall in some of these drafts, there's been proven to be great players available. So I don't think that, not only do I not think that the lotto rule should have been changed, because people would still be complaining if we had guys like Kirby Doc and we had maybe gotten Quentin Byfield instead of Lafreniere, or Kirill Kriprasov hitting, at 9th overall or so, or excuse me if I'm not dead on with his selection, but not in the top 3, right? People would still be upset if we came away with those drafts with guys like that. And if you look around the league at players that have been selected around Elias Anderson or around a Kraftstoff, you're still talking about Oliver Wahlstrom and Casey Middlestat and all these guys that are proving to be good-looking rookies for their respective teams. So long story short, I feel like regardless, there would be the criticism that this happened too fast. And the fact that we won the lotto, I feel like even buffed up our solidifying that we're doing a good job. At least the general managers are doing a good job of accruing picks and not trading away picks. I feel like this blows the doors off of everything. I feel like Drury is someone that is a good enough hockey mind to understand where we're at. But this just makes me fear that we're going to pull the plug and do something crazy, like trade away some of these great draft picks that, I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to blossoming into New York Rangers, who have been said by guys like JD that they wanted to establish cornerstones to this franchise, and then players that have been traded up for because we understood in our respective spot what we could acquire and valued somebody like a Matthew Robertson, or we valued someone like a Braden Schneider to trade up for, or a Keandre Miller, who that puts a lot of faith into the player themselves, that this franchise, these individuals specifically thought highly enough of me to trade from their respective slot. I think this just shakes up everything, and it gets rid of the untouchables list. I think anybody is tradable at this point now, because even though Drury had his fingerprints on it a little bit, none of this is his doing, and it almost feels wrong to not talk about the game a little bit just because that's what we've been doing. But this is such newsworthy stuff that, like, I don't even know where to begin. I feel like,
did you see
guys
the
like
fine?
Strom? Sorry, I saw all of them. They were crazy.
Well, no, the fine came out today on what we got. We got a $250,000 fine for releasing that statement. If you look at that, that is I think it's over. What did Wilson get? Five grand for?
Yeah.
So I think it's like a 45% markup or something of what he got.
Well, it proves the era that we're in, right? Like, words hurt more than literally concussing somebody, or like putting someone's in like safety in jeopardy is less than hurting someone's
Your
feelings.
reputation is more important.
That's the world that we're in right now, that words can put somebody at that point. but literally pushing someone's face against the ground or ripping someone by their hair or throwing someone to the ground, that has less repercussions than typing a tweet. That's really where we're at. And then the problem is, this seems like something that gets solved by firing whoever's in charge of the Twitter. If you're really going to distance yourself that far from what had happened and what was said, maybe Dolan doesn't like the fact that we didn't stand behind what was said, because it seems like he was a proponent for us doing something, which again, we didn't really cover this in any of our episodes. But the fact is, we didn't make any moves at the deadline. And I feel like that was a testament to where we felt we were as an organization. That if we trade anything, we're not going to add anything that we're not going to get from our development over the next couple of years. And if we trade for somebody, that it's probably going to be a rental and we're going to overpay. So I felt like the organization did a great job
I
going,
think we were
you know
both
what?
happy about that.
Absolutely. That it could have gone so much worse, that we could have felt the need to trade a guy like Strome, which would have kept us less competitive down the deadline or down the run where we made a good push. If you look at the way we played in the last 10 games, let's minus the Islanders games from that, because I think we played terribly. But we were coming up on some good hockey, and it was indicative that maybe the crew was right in not trading anybody or trading for somebody. Bold prediction, man. I think Eichel becomes a New York Ranger immediately following any
Yeah.
off season. I mean, this basically just solves the problem. If you're a Dolan, someone who looks at the sport so like black and white, that there's no real gray area and there's no real win, so to speak, from missing the playoffs again. I think you go out and you try to get somebody, probably a physical defenseman, a really big physical defenseman, or a guy like a Reeves that's on a contract for maybe another year or so, that gives you a real physical element, and you go get an Eichel, because that seems to be where he wants. He wants us to be further along in this process than we really are. And man, Eichel was probably going to happen already. But if you're Dolan and you're thinking Jeff Gorton's already reached out and he's already done his due diligence, well, why didn't we pull the trigger? Because a guy like Eichel would have set us over the top and we'd be making those playoff dollars. And mind you, a team stands to make a lot more by being in the playoffs and selling merchandise and what limited tickets that they'll have available than not being in the playoffs, especially this year in a COVID era where the bosses already lost a lot of money. And
Did you see
yeah,
the
it's
interview
tough to
today
think.
with Chris Drury?
Yeah.
Did you see what he said though? That they asked him if it was a requirement for the Rangers this season to make the playoffs. He kind of hurried the question up, but he basically, the gist of it was, no, playoffs were not a requirement for this year. So then, if that's the case and it's all performance based, then what are we? It's hard to believe that it's performance based if playoffs were not on the table. Like, yeah, would it be nice? Were we there? We were close. That's kind of, we've said it multiple times that we shouldn't be here, but we're here. We're not, we're where we want to be, but we're not, we were right there. So I felt like everybody, even the fans, understood. And I see what your point was of like, the diehard Rangers fans understands we're doing the rebuild. Everything has gone correctly. I guess the more James Dolan kind of fan of, I watch hockey, I want to see someone fight, I want to see goals, blah, 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 could argue the point that, well, if we only had one more big defenseman or another centerman that was more established, we would be making the playoffs.
Look, man, I think to your point, you can't have it both ways. You can't say that it's performance based when playoffs were never on the table. You can't say that this has nothing to do with it when this clearly has everything to do with it. You know what I mean? Like, and you can take even the Islanders' performance and put that into question, where they were playing physically and we didn't really do anything about it. Even dating back to the hit on Trouba, which was many years ago, it feels like at this point, it almost seems like it's gone under the wayside that we let a guy who is one of our more physical players, he got demolished and there was no response to that either. So it sort of sets a tone if you're a guy like Dolan, that your team looks weak. And did you see Smith, man? The guy said, what would you say if to the players or to the people out there that think that you're soft, Brendan Smith looked them dead in the eyes and said, "Let me ask you something. Do you think I'm soft?" Like, it was the most horrifying look I've ever seen out of Brendan Smith.
He
And
was
and
getting
this
pretty
and
chippy with Chara last night too. He
it
doesn't
should
care.
speak at least to the fact that Smith understands, shit, dude, he might get another contract if this is the way that the organization is viewing the way we're supposed to play. They might look at Smith having scored 5-6 goals and go, "Hey, buddy, you want another contract because you're one of the guys that we could count on to be physical when it counts." I think Brendan Smith knows more than anybody. He's lucky to be here. This is a guy that got sent down to Hartford and had a fight with a teammate. So he's now in a much better position, having the organization almost backing this mantra, this style of like, "You think we're soft?" That was crazy just to hear him say that. And then we had mentioned at the break of last show that imagine a guy like Trouba on the ice for a game like yesterday, the railroad hits that would have happened. And how about Sean Avery, an ex-Ranger, another guy we mentioned in the last broadcast, coming out and saying, well, what should have happened was he should have been railroaded and we should have dumped the puck in and let their goalie come out and play it. And if this was a time machine and I was out there on the ice, I would have railroaded through that guy. And look, that might not be what you want to hear, right? Maybe as a diehard fan, you don't want to hear someone talk about railroading a goalie or something like that. But man, was Sean Avery fired up, and I couldn't agree with him more that if that's what happens on your end of the ice and that's what happens in that crease, Mark Messier said it too in an interview yesterday with ESPN, said that if that happened back when I was playing, that guy would have never been able to escape the crease. He would have died. He would have been lucky if he got out of there.
Well, I think I
And it's
mentioned to
true.
you that I was like, even Vanek, the night of the incident happened, he's pulling people off and no one's doing anything. I was like, he's just pulling people off like that. I'm like, someone needs to
Yeah.
cross-check Vanek in the back, and everyone would have came and grouped on there. So I do agree with the point of like, we were soft. But like we said in a couple previous episodes, we know Jeff Gordon reached out to people to try to get, we were like runner up for the Zdeno Chara race. Like we knew we had to address our toughness, our gritty defensemen, like, and we never did. But in a season where playoffs don't matter if we make it or not, I think you see what you got with the rookies and the prospects. Plus, it's not a full season. And then you go into the off season and you see who's available, who's retiring, and you go out there and you know you're getting some cap money off the books. You know where you're at, you know who you want, and then you make the next move. I just think this is James Dolan being a little baby like he usually does. And I want to win now. He's Mr. Prideful, but he really is not a good person. If you look, it doesn't matter who you are that walks into MSG. Patrick Ewing, Charles Oakley of the Knicks, you could get kicked out, arrested, doesn't matter who. Look at John Davidson. He's the guy that should be leading the Rangers. Played for them, 20-year announcer, came back after building 2 other organizations to come home, and he's not the guy. There's no loyalty there. So
sorry, that's just crazy to me. Like the JD thing, I almost find more personally offensive than anything, because it's like they're separate things, but for them to be grouped in together is so crazy. Like Jeff Gorton has, not only does JD have a history of it, but Jeff Gorton basically in a summer, in less than 90 days, built what everyone knows to be now the Bruins that won these cups. I'm not talking about, Chara maybe now not playing for them, and it looks like Rask is towards the tail end of his career. He's the guy who built the team that went to that cup final and who has won multiple cups. It's crazy to me that a guy like JD doesn't get more personal respect when, don't forget, we like lured him away from his, like, what a slap in the face, from his cushy position.
Job, yeah.
And to something that he can say that he was proud of, and then the writings on the wall that maybe people are going to leave there, so the whole friggin' team just decides to leave. I mean, what a disaster. And to think that he was not only partially responsible for Panarin, but a strong advocate when he came over, that no, this guy's better than just the points he puts up. This guy's a gel guy. This guy's a locker room guy. This guy improves your lineup from top to bottom. It's just crazy to me. And it's crazy to me to think that a guy like that doesn't get any respect, and that a guy like Gordon, who has his fingerprints all over. I mean, when they write the 30 for 30 about how the Rangers won 3 cups in a matter of 5 years, because I'm telling you, I feel like the team is that good. They're going to reference Fox being fleeced by Jeff Gordon, Mika
Lindgren.
Zibanejad, Ryan Lindgren being those work ethic, character type players that he also targeted in this whole retooling of everything. I mean, the list goes on. Keandre Miller, all these guys that owe where they're at right now to Jeff Gordon. I mean, this is one of those moments that they're going to reference for years when we win. They're going to talk about whoever we hire, because it seems like Drury's going nowhere, but there's going to be, you can assume, some sort of a hiring and maybe a changing of the guard for coaches. But there is going to be a 20-minute excerpt in that documentary about Jeff Gordon and JD doing what they did, because you can't get to where in my opinion, you can't get to where we are right now if you didn't have a mastermind behind doing all that stuff. And like I said, winning the lotto certainly helps towards establishing a legitimacy. Before we forget, I mean, what a beautiful play by Hedel in the neutral zone to shake like 3 defenders and just brushes a quick little pass to Laff, who was standing like all alone in the opposite OV office. That was a beautiful shot. And how about Zach Jones chipping in with 2 assists, having had these injuries to defensemen, stepping up big time, and again, looking kind of Fox-like with the way he drags the puck along the blue line, and I mean, sniped a pass down to Morgan Barron, who cashes in
He's a
for
good
his first
defender too,
career.
minus his offense, which like goes under like the same thing as Fox. But like I see him, he's right there breaking up the pass. He's where he's supposed to be. He doesn't look like, I see a little bit like, yeah, what is this, his 4th or 5th game? I don't know. But
Not many, yeah.
yeah, when you see Runen out there, he looks a little more lost. Like, this guy looks like, well, maybe you were the reason that your UMass won that national championship. Like, you were definitely a big contributing factor to that team.
And not to make excuses, but you can always attribute that a little bit to the fact that Jones has been in this position on American ice before, and that the game is more closely comparable to how they play college hockey. And Reunen is probably still adapting a little bit, but the fact is, man, he looks, these guys that are selected in the second round, these defensemen, any defenseman or goalie that gets selected that high, you have high hopes for, because that's to say that in a different year, maybe you would have been a number, 20 overall pick. And Jones is looking like a steal right now for us as a late second, early third round pick.
And Morgan Barron, you can't forget the Morgan Barron goal last night.
No, that was it was a beautiful feed from Jones to Barron, who was just standing there all alone. So, man, a lot of craziness. I mean, what a year to recap the entire season. I mean, it started with after 6 games, moving on from Tony DeAngelo. That almost seems like ancient history. Just all the drama happening with like losing your number 1 goalie for a period of time, losing Panarin for a period of time, with the slanderous comments out of Russia. What a year for drama for the Rangers, and it almost feels like good that the season's coming to a close, because it's like I can't imagine what
I can't take anymore.
Happen.
My heart can't take anymore over here. Yesterday really hurt. like not only like me and anybody who watches this, me and Steve, we play in a fantasy hockey league, so we're actually in the finals. I'm playing Team Steve over there. So it was hard for me last night with watching how the Rangers unfolded with Strome, and I had picked up Hathaway from the Capitals, and it was just went right to fights and everything. Like, it was just kind of like fitting that that's how the year was ending, and watching that happen. And for the fantasy, like, I just couldn't believe it. I was like, to top this day off of weird stuff and this weird Rangers year and this weird everything, it was just unbelievable to me. I was like, that's it.
I know, and I almost hate to like drag like this into my actual life, but like I was going to work yesterday when I read that, and for like the first hour, I couldn't get my head on.
I was so
I couldn't, dude, I couldn't screw my head on right, man. And one of the chefs I work with is a big Rangers fan, and he was like, I told him what had happened, and he kept just saying why. Like it's like to anyone who's even more of a casual fan or a diehard like us, it's such a puzzling time, and
Shout out
it
to the
would
hockey
really,
guy. Even the hockey guy didn't know what was
yeah,
going on. He was like, he didn't know what I guess he was doing 2 episodes. He didn't really know what to do for the second episode. And he's like, oh, thank God the Rangers answered with this craziness.
he even went as far as to say one of the weirdest days for hockey ever. Like I mean,
Ever.
this is crazy news. And look, man, I think that's about all we have to say. But this seems like it's going to be maybe its own topic again for the off season. Something about this just doesn't seem like it's over. So I'm sure we're going to talk about more of this soon. But here's
We got
hoping
the
that,
Bruins tonight.
yeah, I'm hoping that there's no other newsworthy events and we can just go back to talking about the games because this was too much, man.
You almost wanted yesterday to, as a Rangers fan, diehard. I never want to say this, and I always want more and more hockey, but I almost wanted yesterday to be the last game of the the year for us.
Yeah,
Just to be like,
yeah.
all right, we're done. I'll look at the Rangers info in like a week or two, see where we're at, and then move
Yeah.
on. So
Well, only a couple more, and hopefully it gives us something to watch tonight because I could use a little pick me up.
yeah. Who do you think? Obviously, Igor's in that, right?
Has to be. That has to be the reason why Georgiev was in. Who didn't play all that poorly yesterday either, but gives Igor one more shot to
Shout out
come in and do
TJ
his thing.
Oshie. Thank you for having a hat trick after I dropped you.
Yeah, shout out Garnett Hathaway for that fight. I love that. And let's go pop
And
and
Ryan
slap.
Strome, when did you become a fighter? If you ever listen to this, Ryan Strome, when did you become Mr. Tough Guy?
Yeah, -7 points, Ryan Strom. I wanted to thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, I think that does it for a very eventful episode 20 of the Broadway block. Stay tuned for episode 21 for the game recap and more on after the Boston game.
Take care, brother.
Thanks, Steve.